Hi everyone, welcome to our review of Star Trek Picard. Today we are reviewing episode 4 of season 2. We've been reviewing every episode so far, and today I'm joined once again by Alan from Halifax and Namir from Toronto. And I'm Lucas, and I live here in Los Angeles. So, episode 4. What is the name of this episode? I forget already.
Watcher.
The Watcher. Okay.
It's just Watcher.
We need a way to find Rios and get back to fixing the timeline.
Are you suggesting we steal a vehicle?
Redwing, stop! Stop! Are you guys alive? Please tell me you're alive.
We must find a way to bring us home. It is vital to the future of humanity.
I liked it more than last week's. There was a lot going on. And a lot of messed up time travel stuff that's, tricky to wrap your brain around. But I had a lot of fun with this one, and I was gonna say we're gonna have a lot to unpack, I think, for this one, because there was a lot going on.
I didn't like it. I kind of felt, I don't know. I think it sometimes it feels like Alan and I are watching different shows. It's totally fine, but I kind of felt like the opposite. I felt like there was nothing going on. It kind of felt like a filler episode. There was some plot movement. Nothing really interesting was happening. I didn't find any of the storylines, engaging in any way. I was hoping for more Borg Queen and Jurati. We didn't get any of that. So I was kind of disappointed. I think that I was right. That I think that the second episode of the second season so far is definitely the strongest. I can't see them, and it seems like it's kind of gone like this, and then it's kind of going down. So that's kind of where I stand.
This week I have to agree with Namir. It's interesting that you said filler episode, because that's exactly how I felt. I felt bored and then angry, and it's hard for me because I actually really want to like the show, and I want to be fair. I don't want to just come here and rant about everything I hate about the show, but that there were some interesting elements, and I sort of like the elements, but the whole episode was a little bit like much ado about nothing. Like nothing really moves forward, and there are ideas that are interesting, but the way that they're written fall flat, and so yeah, not a fan.
Yeah, like if they had taken this episode and combined it with the episode, like with episode 3, I think that would have made a viable kind of 1 hour show. But it's like they split it up into 2 episodes, and we still don't know who the Watcher is, which is driving me crazy because they're building it up to something, and I can't imagine that it's going to be worth it, right? Like,
well, then they reveal at the end of the episode that the Watcher is human version of Lars.
I don't think so.
Well, it's
is
Lars.
that the implication?
Well,
I
maybe it's like a shapeshifter or whatever, but it's Lars, and she's human. She's not a Vulcan. She's not a Romulan. So, and that's supposed to be like the Watcher at the end.
I guess, but you still don't know who the Watcher is. You don't know anything about the Watcher. It's just like another twist to get you to watch to watch episode 5, which I don't really appreciate. I want some answers, even though I'm not really that invested. I still want some answers. I still want to know.
Well, they've already given a major hint if you've watched the original series, because they disappear into that.
If I've learned one thing, is Namir has not seen the original series.
Oh, okay.
What? No. Hang on. I have watched the original series. I don't watch it constantly over and over again, like some people I know.
When's the last time you watched an episode of the original series, Namir? And be honest.
Good question.
Because I'll know if you're lying.
No, it's probably a few years ago. It was definitely like it wasn't
like when you were like in this century or last century.
Yes, this century, Lucas.
Well, you're old enough that when you were a teenager, which is the last time you may have seen the original series, it would have been last century.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Your math is faster than mine. And
to be fair, there are episodes that I haven't seen since last century, but I will soon remedy that.
Okay. I think, the last episode I watched was Oh, what was the last episode I watched? I think it was. No, I don't remember.
Okay, my point's been made.
But why is that?
Are
But
we
hang
gonna
on,
get
why is,
back on point? Okay.
but why? But why is that relevant? I shouldn't have to have this broad back. No, it's not
I'll tell you
relevant
why
because
it's
I shouldn't
relevant.
have any knowledge of the original series to enjoy this one.
Well, I'm sure they'll explain it, but if you had watched the original series and you had watched the episode Assignment Earth, you would know that.
That I remember. I remember Assignment Earth. That's a great
Okay.
episode.
So you remember Gary 7,
Yeah, I remember Gary 7.
and he had a little closet that he could come transport through, and it was like a blue cloud. And they did the exact same effect with Laris. So the implication here is that the Watcher is one of those agents like Gary 7, or maybe Gary 7 himself.
Oh, that's actually really cool. I hadn't even.
They're there to monitor the time.
But this is what I'm talking about. This show has really cool ideas in it. You know, like the idea of Seven and what's her face, Rafi, stealing a police car to go get Rios is a good idea, but it's badly executed. You know what I mean? Like, and the idea of having the Kirk Thatcher on the bus again, the punk on the bus, was a good idea, but it kind of fell flat a little bit.
Oh, I love that. That was I was so happy when that happened.
Hey! You mind stopping that noise?
Yeah, okay, fine. I just like that song.
Alan is just like powered by nostalgia, like that makes up the core of Alan's being.
I'm powered by beans.
No, I thought that was a great little callback. Oh, come on.
But it's only
And the
great
fact
for
that he's like, the fact that he was like kind of apologetic about it made it all the funnier. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I just really love this song.
Right, okay, well, let's get back to this, but I have a question for both of you that's related to this issue, and it's an honest question, because a lot of you guys have both mentioned this idea of fan service and good versus bad, and my question is, I don't really understand what fan service is and what it means.
well, it's exactly the idea that you have to be a fan to understand certain aspects of a show. Like you have to kind of be an insider to understand like the Easter eggs, and then you would get more enjoyment out of it, right? So,
Which
you're like, oh, I remember that from the original series. But if you're not an original series fan and you're just watching Picard because you want to watch a good TV show, or in this case, a mediocre TV show, then you're not going to get that same level of enjoyment, right? So there's specific things in the episode that are geared directly towards Uber fans, which I'm not. I don't like that. I don't like it when TV shows do that, because it means that people have to be a fan to watch it or get
So
it seems lazy.
So is that the same thing as, like, for example, the punk in the bus sequence? So the punk in the bus scene in this episode is not integral to the episode. So whether you get the reference of that scene to Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home with the same character, it doesn't affect your understanding or enjoyment of the episode per se, because so if you get it, you enjoy it. If you don't get it, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't affect the episode really. Like but so
no,
that's a different thing. Is that also fan service, or is that a different thing? Like
no, that's still fan service. Like the guy on the the punk guy on the bus is fan service. But the problem is that sometimes when you do fan service, it only works for the fans, and for other people it falls flat. Like that, to me, that joke falls flat. Right, I understood the reference, but it's actually not. It's not as well executed as it was in the movie, right? Like it's kind of not funny, right?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I like that he was in that scene. I liked his cameo, and I liked the reference. But you make a really good point, Namir, which is like the original scene was really good and really funny, iconic, and that's what they brought it back. But this one wasn't at the same level,
No. But it does.
It could have been, but it wasn't.
Yeah, like it almost doesn't matter that it wasn't executed well, because it's enough for people who understand the joke that are sort of in on it to get it, and then they can just move on, right? It's like they don't even care about the writing. They're just like, oh, let's put this in there because we think the fans are going to love it.
And I did.
And you did, and you're part of the problem, Alan.
Okay, so tell what did you like about it, Alan? About that scene?
Well, at first I didn't realize it was the exact same actor, and then of course I read afterwards it was. But I got the reference, and the fact that the song was like a sequel to the song from the Voyage Home, where it's like I hate you, and then this one was I still hate you. I was like, I don't know, I thought it was clever, it was cute, and I mean, yeah, it wasn't, Seven's dealing with him wasn't as funny as Spock's just gingerly going over and pinching his neck and everybody applauding him. That was still a superior scene, but yeah, I appreciated the callback, and yeah, I don't know. I know my other friend that watches the show watched that, and he loved it too. So I'm not alone, even though I am here on our show. But
I know, but you guys loved it because you got the reference. This is my point.
Wait. So did you get the reference, Namir, when you watched it?
I only got the reference because Jen was like, "Hey, that's from Voyage Home," so she got it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." So I didn't get it. And I was like, "This is really unfunny."
Did you turn around and say, "I'm sorry, I don't watch the original series"?
No, if I said that, she would divorce me.
Wait,
Like,
does Jen like Star Trek? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Why is she not on the show? Why is she not your Siskel to your Ebert?
She should be, to be honest, because she's really. But she would be better than me, and I can't have that. I can't be upstaged. In my own home.
So I two things that I read about that was, did you realize that this was not the first time that Kirk Thatcher reprised his punk on the bus character? That he also reprised it in one of the Marvel Spider-Man movies?
Really?
Did not know that.
Yeah, I think the first movie, I'm not sure which movie it was, but apparently because Kevin Feige, how do you pronounce his last name? Feige. That guy, the Marvel producer, is a fan of Star Trek, so they put that scene in. So this is the second time that he's playing reprising his character, and just as a trivia point, he wrote and performed the song. I assume the second song, but definitely the first time.
Can I just make a point here? I just want to point out that we've been talking about this like 10-second scene for 10 minutes. And I think it's because the rest of the episode is just so boring and devoid of life that there's nothing else to talk about.
Okay, let's talk. Alan, you pick a scene or something else in the episode that you thought was good or you'd like to talk about.
I liked Picard's interaction with the new Guinan. I thought that was... I was really interested in their interaction and Guinan's view of humanity at the time, that that she's ready to leave the planet. And I really like the line where she said Picard said, it was like, stay a little longer. I was like, things will change or whatever, things will improve. And she's like, for people like you, who look like you, you can be patient, and that doesn't work for people who look like me. And then she said, hatred is so rampant, and in this century they took off a hood and put on a suit. And I was like, oh, I really like that line. I was like, that line really resonated with me. I was like, that was and it's a sad commentary on and it is kind of what you see these days, that in COVID and all that stuff, and Trump has really revealed how divisive, and how all the stuff we thought we were better than is still so prevalent in our society. And it's sad that all these things have happened, and we realize how much hatred and and stuff still exists in the world. So I really enjoyed the scenes with Guinan and her perspectives on our society as it is right now, and her and Picard's dynamic. I didn't know if I was going to like the new Guinan, new actress playing Guinan, but I liked it, and I liked the scenes in 10 Forward where she brings up the shotgun, and because it reminded me of when I can't remember what episode it was in Next Generation where she has like the rifle behind the bar, and she like shoots the ceiling to stop a bar fight or whatever.
Isn't it from Sarek, season 3?
Was that what it was from? I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, I thought that was like that little shotgun she brings out reminded me of that.
Yeah, I thought I wouldn't like the new Guinan. I was ready to dislike the whole idea of having a new Guinan, but I actually warmed up to it. I thought that scene at the end with Guinan and Picard was kind of like the one positive of the episode. I think she seems to be a good character, and I like how she's reframed. I like the actor. I think she did a really good job, and she seemed like Guinan. It answers that question of how they first met, and also Alan. The episode answered the question of why Picard has an English accent instead of a French
right?
one.
I was texting my other friend. I was like, it's like we know why he's British now.
I know. I saw that. I was like, oh, Alan's gonna be so happy.
I was.
But it doesn't explain why his brother has a French accent still.
His brother didn't have a French accent.
Are you sure? I thought he did.
I don't think he really did.
No, it was.
Did he have an accent?
Had a French accent.
But he was played by Jeremy Kemp, who's British.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, everything worked out. I guess there's no holes at all anywhere in the series.
Okay, my turn, because first of all, it's really stupid that they explain that Picard is British, because it's again the other thing that we talked about 2 episodes ago, where people are old and then like Guinan or Q look old, but then you feel forced to explain it, and it creates more. It speaks to the suspension of disbelief, and it's an unnecessary explanation. I don't care. And it doesn't matter, and it's better not being explained to like have to explain it. It's just boring, really, and it's kind of a boring explanation. What does it add to his character? What does it add to anything? It doesn't.
So that's actually a really good example of fan service, right? Because the fan community is like, oh, how come he has a British accent if he's French? And they're like, well, we're gonna solve this issue once and for all with this episode. Right. That's kind of what that is.
I like the fact that Picard just give a little insight to his family history and the history of Chateau Picard.
I like the I don't mind the history. I always like hearing about history, but the fact that the history has to explain something like that, I was a little bit disappointed that they actually went out of their way to explain it, because I was happy with the way it was.
I don't know if they went out of their way. It was just a casual mention, like, "Oh, where did your family escape to? England."
Well, a writer wrote that, and he took time to write it, and then some other writer came around and revised it. Another writer came, and there was a script editor, and so that's going out of your way. That's all the things that happened for that to be in the episode. He's not a real person, so he didn't go out of his way personally, but all the people involved in the show wrote it that way. And the other thing is, and maybe it's just me, and yeah, I'm curious about what you guys think, but there's Latin American characters, and there's Guinan as a black woman, and they speak to issues, but I feel like A, it seems very on the nose, and B, I don't know what it's really being like adding to the conversation in terms of any kind of insight. And I keep wondering who is writing this stuff, because it sounds more like talking points than actually something that comes out of the character, or something that it advances the story in some way. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but
it does make sense, and I've kind of had this dilemma as well, like, because I think science fiction works best when it's on the level of metaphor and allegory, right? Which the original show and the Next Generation does really well, but they don't do that here, right? They kind of remove that completely, and they're very obvious about the story they want to tell and the position they're taking on social issues, which I don't have a problem with. I just think it's poor writing. Like, and we talk about the second episode of this season a lot because it's so good. That to me is a much better way of addressing social issues, like as kind of a comparable situation, but not something that's so on the nose, because you have to think about it, right? You have to, as an audience member and as a viewer, you have to think, oh, wait a second, this seems familiar. This situation is like, World War II and Nazism and the Holocaust, right? But when you come out and outright just say it, it's almost less effective. It's a little bit lazy.
It takes out the interactiveness, because if it's on the level of metaphor, then you have to add your layer of meaning and you bring your experience to it, and it's a lot more engaging that way. If you're just being told racism bad,
yeah,
equality good, that's great for like a government poster or like a TED talk or whatever, but doesn't make for very dramatic storytelling.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that's sort of the weakest parts of the episode, this episode and last episode, is when they kind of try and tackle these issues with this big ham fist, right? Without any sort of nuance and without any real reason to tell it that way, because it's not coming out of the characters, right? It's not coming out of the story itself or the narrative that they're trying to build or the character interactions. Yeah, it just seems really, I don't know, unnatural. I don't know if that's a way to describe it, but it pulls me out of the episode, right? It totally ruins that suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, the immigration stuff is probably the weakest part of it for me as well. I mean, it's very cliche ridden right now. We got I can't profess to know what actually happens to these people in real life when they end up in these detentions and have to go through the deportation process. But, at the same time, I feel I've seen Rio's dilemma, or his situation, play out similarly in other movies and TV shows. Like, it's, there's the guards who are, sadistic and racist and, calling them like, oh, hey, Jose or Juan or whatever, it's like, and
it's really laid on thick,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they would address this differently and, be more subtle and more of an allegory, and without, because I mean they're in this time period and there's history where this is a reality for undocumented.
Well, I have a great answer for you. The way that you would do it is the way that they did it in past tense. The guards in past tense weren't like complete assholes. They were guys that were reluctantly doing their jobs, and then there was the social worker who was like, she knew it wasn't really right, but what can you do? And there was apathy, and there was I don't think there was anybody, even the antagonist of that episode wasn't just a bad person, And then the other way that they did it really well in Star Trek on kind of this level is Far Beyond the Stars, where Sisko has a hallucination, or maybe he goes back in time, or he is basically a 1940s science fiction writer who gets sidelined because he's black. And that is a really good episode, and it deals with things a lot more like in your face than metaphorically, but it plays with that whole idea a lot of the metaphor versus the reality, and it's such a great episode. And and so I think that something more along those lines, taking from either of those episodes as examples, is what would improve something like this episode.
Yeah, because my feeling is that the writers looked and it's like, hey, we're going to go back in time, and we have a Hispanic character. and we're going to LA, and it's close to the Mexican border where there's, undocumented immigrants coming across. And like, maybe we can use him to show, or address these contemporary issues. And I'm like, but yeah, it's really on the nose, like Namir said. And, I don't find it particularly engaging. I get, the thing is, it almost feels like watching the news. Like, you want to watch Star Trek to be entertained, and what they're showing here is just kind of is our reality, and it's not, there's not that entertaining allegory, like we'd have an original series, where you'd have a an adventure on a planet, but it's an allegory to Vietnam or whatever. It would be like, we're going to time travel to Vietnam and show all the awful things that are happening in Vietnam, and you're like, well, I don't really want to be reminded about what's in the news right now that's horrific, and it's like I'm here for some intellectual stimulation, but I'm also here for some entertainment, and I don't want to be reminded of what I just watched on the 6 o'clock news. So I guess there's that too. But
I think the reason I have a hard time putting my finger on it, but I think the reason I find that some of those things ring false to me is that I live in Los Angeles and I interact with a lot of Latin Americans in Spanish, and we don't spend all our time talking about immigration policy. It is not really what's on the mind of people, of regular people. It's not like how they interact. And I think to have Latin American characters and then just kind of make it about that is kind of oversimplifying the issue and the characters and the culture. And it's like, I think it could have been a lot more interesting,
The one thing I will give for that scene, again, it was pretty cliche ridden, but I loved his honest truth when he says who he is to the guard, that he's a captain of the Stargazer and he's coming through time to fix what's broken, and he's following the lead of a flesh and blood robot, or whatever he called Picard there. Like that whole spiel really made me laugh. But yeah, other than that moment was great. But yeah, the rest of the Rio's story is so far not doing a whole lot for me.
It's funny, like one of the things that I always thought was interesting about Star Trek Next Gen and the original Star Trek is that it really seemed like Earth was just one homogenous culture. Like it had gotten to the point where everybody was kind of the same, they were all part of, planet Earth and culture Earth, right? And so somebody like Rios, obviously having this Latin American sort of side to him, going back in time to LA, it would have been really interesting for him to kind of start off by rediscovering some of that culture that maybe he had forgotten about, kind of like what Lucas was talking about, right? Like maybe he gets exposed to the Latin community in LA and realizes, oh my God, this is really vibrant. These are real people. And then it starts to kind of, he kind of is able to connect with that. And then you can do something like have Ice come in and kind of throw that all apart. But you need to have that setup, right? You need to have Rios kind of start to be invested in that community before it becomes meaningful when Ice comes in and tears it apart, right? That, I think, would have been really much more effective, because the way that they did it just seemed kind of unearned, right? Like he just, you automatically assume because his last name is Rios that he's connected with his Latin American roots. And maybe that's not true. I don't know. Maybe it is. But it doesn't come across, right? You're just making an assumption. It's almost stereotypical. Like you're almost stereotyping him in a weird way. And the more I think about it, the more it feels like vaguely offensive, which I think is obviously not the intention.
Par for the course with Latin American characters in general in movies and TV. And I'm going to save my rant, my Latinos and TV and movie rant for some other time, but I find it's like a really big problem, generally speaking.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, if the point of this episode was to make you think about the issues, then it kind of has made me think about it, but probably not on the side that they wanted me to think about it. You know, so maybe it did the opposite of what they were hoping. I have no idea. I just know that it falls flat because Rios is not invested. Like, his character doesn't seem like he should be invested in that situation, and they could have done a lot more with it.
Okay, let's change gears for a second, and let's talk about the most important part of the episode, and that is the epic car chase where nobody's chasing anybody.
That wasn't that epic at all.
What did you guys think of that whole scene with Raffi and Seven?
Yeah, that also didn't do much for me. It seemed to be just exist so that they could have some banter, and I don't know if their banter is there yet for like a buddy type adventure. And yeah, like I didn't get the point. I hate that in I always laugh at this in TV and movies when someone says, "Oh, I'm gonna use this computer to hack into ICE," and I'm like, I was like, let's see, we're looking for a Latin American male, and and she's like hacked into ICE in like what 5 seconds. I'm like, you just got here, you don't know any of this antiquated technology, and you suddenly figured it out. And they do that all the time where it's like, I remember watching like Smallville and stuff like that with like Chloe, and she was like, I'll just go into the DMV database, and she's like, and she's in. I'm like, man, my computer doesn't even boot up, let alone hack into anything. And I always just laugh at that. And then, yeah, they had this car chase, and then there's like not really any, I love a good car chase, and this was not a good car chase. I don't even know, like you say, I don't even know if they're being chased by anybody at the first. It seemed like they were just driving really fast through the city, and then finally some cops started to chase them towards the end, and it was really not that exciting.
Yeah, it kind of felt like the writers were like, oh, we have like 5 minutes to fill in here. What do we do? Car chase. Just throw in the car chase template, and it doesn't work. Like, I didn't really understand any of that. I mean, I can't even pick one part out of it because none of it made sense. And
they didn't even crash into like a homeless person with like a shopping cart full of cans or construction workers with a pane of glass walking across the street. Like, there was nothing happened in this car chase at all. Nobody was threatened, and nobody got run off the road and hit any cars.
Yeah.
It's like none of your car chase cliches even happened. It was just driving around the city real fast.
Yeah. The problem is like Raffi and 7 of 9 don't really have any chemistry. Like, they're not a good duo because they don't play off of each other really well. The dialogue does as is written, but the way that the actors are kind of portraying those characters, it doesn't really work. And it's like it should work on paper, but it doesn't come across. Like, nothing really works. It all falls kind of flat. I think that, I was really surprised that they fell into that. I was 100% certain that when 7 was going to start driving, the expectation is that she's going to like squeal out of there and go super fast. And I was like, well, they're not going to fall into that because that's going to be expected. I thought she would like reverse out of there like an old granny, and that would have been hilarious, right? And drive super slow, and Raffi would have been like, what are you doing? Drive faster. She's like, no, I don't know how to drive this car, and I was looking forward to that. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And then they didn't do it. They did the car chase. And I was like, why would you do that? Nobody cares about car chases in Star Trek.
Well, I would if it was exciting.
I am a huge car chase fan, and I'm a huge car chase in LA fan. I love those car chases in Lethal Weapon, and Terminator, and Terminator 2. There's so many great examples. Speed, and this was not only hugely disappointing because, as you guys said already, she's just driving really fast, and we don't really understand what's happening, and there's no real like story or stakes in the car chase, kind of really. And the other thing is that they were trying to make it like a buddy cop movie, but everything was very, very tropey. There was something, they would actually lift lines out of things like when she says, oh, you trying to hit people? That's totally Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis in Die Hard 3, you know? Are you aiming for these people, you know, when they're driving through Central Park? Like, it's that kind of level of cliche. The whole episode is a cliche. There's the cliche of the car chase, the cliche of the immigration center and the plight of the immigrants, there and the super, you know, racist, like, evil policeman. There's the cliche of I don't know what to call it, but basically, you know, the whole scene with Guinan, which I guess is a whole other thing that I wanted to address. But anyways, I just felt like, before I get into the Guinan, did you want to say something? Because I think Namir, you said something about Girardi and the Borg Queen, and there is a scene in there.
There is, yeah. I mean, for me, that dynamic between Girardi, the Borg Queen, and Picard is really fantastic. It's really great because you have the Borg Queen that's kind of like trying to obviously manipulate these two people.
She's like the Hannibal Lecter of the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great way of putting it. She's the Hannibal Lecter, but it turns out that one of them, it may actually be smarter than she is, which is great. And Picard is like the cult member that's gotten out, right? So understands everything and understands the danger and is trying to warn Girardi about it. Anyway, that whole dynamic is so fantastic. Like, it really works. And there's not enough of it, and so that's it. Like, when those three are, even Girardi and the Borg Queen, are on screen, then it feels like the show is clicking. Like, it feels like it works, you know. And any other time, it just feels off. Like, it just feels like wrong. And I knew I wouldn't like the episode when Picard left. And then there was like flashback sequences with his mom again, and Mama, and then I was like, oh no, I thought we had left flashback land, but it's back again for some reason. So yeah. Anyway, so that's so anytime there's a flashback in an episode with Mama, I think it's a bad sign.
Is her name Girardi or Girardi? What's her name?
I have no idea. Elrond.
Girardi.
I think it's Elrond.
Alan?
I think it's Girardi.
It's Girardi.
Girardi. I think you were saying Girardi. I mean, I know how you like mispronouncing things, but I just want to point it out in case you are making a mistake and you want.
Whatever, sugar smacks.
I just want to chime in on the Borg Queen stuff too. That's another strong part of this episode. Still is Alison Pill and her dynamic with the Borg Queen. There wasn't quite enough of it in this one, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure that we're on the path to her becoming assimilated or becoming the Borg Queen or some sort of cohort for the Borg Queen. Even the lighting in that scene where there was like this, when she was being kind of manipulated by the Borg Queen, talking about her loneliness and all that, and that she had like this green was like, and which I always associate with the Borg, obviously. It seemed like, it was, she was absorbing it or something. She was being lulled into it. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but the green glow with the throb on her. Of light on her face while she was being, kind of manipulated emotionally by the Borg Queen. I thought that was, kind of foreshadowing that she would join the Borg at some point.
I think she's going to become like a superhero bionic like Borg person, because in the trailer you see Girardi in LA and she's in a red dress and she's jumping from car to car, like kind of doing Trinity.
No, really?
Trinity and the Matrix, basically.
Oh, God. You're not serious,
So
right?
you're looking forward to this, I can tell. God. Well, I don't know what to say about it. I agree that in the last episode, in episode 3, that was one of the stronger parts of the episode. Here, it's not, they don't really advance it, but my instinct is that they spend more time amplifying and expanding things that are not that interesting, like basically everything else in the episode, and then we get very little of the Jurati Borg Queen stuff, which is, story tension wise, probably one of the more interesting things, And I think that other TV shows and movies have made this mistake of when you start purposely inviting a comparison to a great movie like Star Trek 4, then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, because you got to be as good as Star Trek 4 or better. Otherwise, you're just going to look like a cheap knockoff. And I think that was part of the problem with this episode is it was inviting a lot of those comparisons. But just as an example, like Star Trek 4 and the way that each, there's like an ABC kind of storyline in that movie, and how each storyline is carried forward by the other and interacts, and every joke, kind of plays into, trying to accomplish a goal or solve a problem, and it's a very tight script. And this kind of tries to do the same thing where it divides the group up into different pieces, but it doesn't manage to like tie them all together or tell a compelling story.
Yeah, and they do a weird thing where the original goals of the separate storyline doesn't end up being what they do at the end, right? Because Raffi and Seven and what's his name, Rios, they're looking for the Watcher, right? And then so you're like, okay, that is their mission, that's their goal, and then it changes to finding Rios and saving Rios, and then Picard ends up finding the Watcher, which to me is kind of like, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Because if they have a goal, at least let them get it, right? At least let them get to the point where they can, they achieve the goal, right? Rather than kind of like switching it up, because to me it just seems really muddled, right? And it would have been, I think, much more interesting if they had found Guinan before Picard, right? Because you're throwing in some curveballs there, which might be, or if they had found the Watcher before Picard. But again, it's like one of those things where the show seems to have a choice between doing something really interesting and doing something kind of lazily and something more boring, and they always choose the lazy way and the boring way.
Well, another part I like, I'll just move along here, was towards the end when they discovered the Watcher. I like that whole sequence. I thought that was cool that there was like some sort of possession of just random people guiding Picard around the park.
That's also like that's kind of like a Matrix thing as well, I found. But
did they do that in the Assignment Earth episode? That wasn't in Assignment Earth.
No,
I don't think so.
No.
But at first, what I was thinking was going on was that they were going to end up being the prophets from Deep Space Nine because of the eye thing. I know when Kira got possessed by a prophet in Deep Space Nine, her eyes changed, and they were kind of like a bluish white. And I thought, it'd be interesting if because they had that tablet as a clue in the original teaser trailer from Deep Space Nine, which broke open and released a prophet in the Pa Wraith or something. But that's what I kind of thought maybe they were going with, because the prophets are a non-linear, live outside of time, and maybe they were the Watcher. But it seems like they're going to the Assignment Earth people, maybe. Anyway, apparently, I think I'm wrong already. But at first, I got excited. I'm like, oh, it's going to be the wormhole aliens from Deep Space Nine. They're going to be the Watcher.
I like that it's that this theory you have that it's Assignment Earth, Gary 7, space agency or whatever, space spies.
That'd be cool reveal too. That because it looks like that's what they're going towards with that effect at the end with the smoky square door.
It didn't even occur to me, but you're 100% right about that.
Yeah.
I really don't like the Guinan scene, And the reason I don't like it is that the actress is fine, and what she talks about and what they talk about is okay. It's fine. It's not, objectionable, but it totally rang false to me. Her whole characterization, if of Guinan, doesn't seem like Guinan at all. If you take Guinan from Time's Arrow, where she's younger and in the 1800s, and then you look at Guinan in the 24th century, then you have a through line of like what her character's like when she's younger and what is she's like when she's older. And what we're asked to believe is somewhere in the middle she gets really bitter. It seems like to me that the way that Guinan, in her infinite wisdom and in her advanced age, that how she would react to all this crazy stuff on Earth is she should have been more like the Picard character in that scene where she was like, things are really bad right now, but they're going to figure it out because she's been around for a long time. She's not going to get stuck in the details. She's going to have the sort of universal outlook on things. But it somehow her character changes totally. And even she's been angry about things before, but she's always very kind of calm. And it's interesting, Alan, that you brought up the shotgun in the comparison to that when she uses that in the other episode, which I think actually was Night Terrors in season 4. But anyways, it seems completely out of character for her to have a shotgun, and it's just, at least make it like a laser gun or something that's like that makes sense with her character. It's just like what, like.
But why would she have a laser gun?
But why would she have a shotgun?
Well, because it's a contemporary weapon. For the time
Right.
period she's in.
Yeah. No, I understand that, but she's not a human. She is an alien, and they have spaceships and ray guns. So that is a lot more, if she had the gun from the episode that we saw or something like that, then that would make sense. But I guess what I'm saying is that a shotgun is such a boring prop. It's been done a million times. How many times do you see somebody with a shotgun in a movie? It's done. It doesn't add anything to her character. It's not interesting at all. And so, anyways, that was my problem with the whole Guinan thing. Is that it just.
Yeah, I forgot about Time Zero, about that episode, about Time Zero. Yeah, I forgot about that episode, and now that you mention it, you're right. It doesn't really make sense. Like her character does not, because I actually thought that this was probably the earliest that they've met, but you're right. They met in that old Western town.
No, they didn't.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. They didn't meet, but she was in the.
Well, that's the other thing that doesn't make sense. Didn't they meet in Time's Arrow? And so she was.
I don't think she did.
She did. They did.
I don't
meet.
think they met.
We're not. Are we going to get into a temporal mechanics discussion now? Because I had the exact same discussion with my other friend there.
Well, what do you think we're here for?
Because he made no. He said, "Oh, they met in the 1800s." I'm like, not in this timeline. They did not. They're still fixing the timeline. So they're still in this alternate reality where there is no Enterprise D. They did not go back to 1800s. They did not meet Guinan. There's two separate. There's a divergent future and there's a divergent past.
That doesn't make any sense.
I have a point here that I think is relevant. The thing that diverges the timeline hasn't happened yet. That doesn't happen for another 3 days.
Exactly.
But no.
No.
You have to get out my diagram that I made earlier.
No. I understand what you're
saying.
diagram.
There is a diagram.
We understand what you're saying, but you're just taking. You can look at it both ways. You can say that the thing has already happened in the future, therefore there was no Federation in the future, therefore they didn't go back in time, therefore none of that happened. You can look at it that way, or you can look at it like they're in the present. It hasn't even happened yet, so.
Well, that's why he says he's Picard, that rings a bell with her, because she's like they established in yesterday's Enterprise. She's aware of other timelines. So when they haven't technically met in 1800s in this timeline that they're trying to fix, because they're still coming back from the Confederation future.
No,
fix whatever. But she's aware that they have met in an alternate timeline.
No. The timeline they're in right now, when they meet, is the right timeline. The event that converges the timeline doesn't happen for another 3 days. That's the thing they're trying to stop.
Oh.
Yes.
I think the problem is you're both right. You're both right. It's just quantum mechanics or whatever it's called, temporal logic doesn't make sense.
Why? Wait. Why not? What? Why am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying you're both right, but because it's a temporal logic issue.
No, Alan's totally wrong.
I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So, in Back to the Future,
yeah,
right? He goes back in time, prevents his parents from meeting. Therefore, it's going to prevent his birth, and then he starts to die, and he has to make sure that they get together, right?
Sure.
But if he dies, then he never would have gone to the back to the past in the first place. He never would have prevented them from meeting in the first place, in which case he's totally okay. So the point is that's the problem with time travel in storytelling. Forget about how it works in theory in real life, but in movies, when they do this thing, it kind of messes everything up, because it's like you kind of have to buy into whatever the writer is saying. And in the Back to the Future, it's done in such a way where you just buy it. It makes sense, A, B, C, D. But in this case, because there's a history, because there's been other time travel episodes, so on and so forth, it starts getting really complicated. It only makes sense, really, no offense, Namir, from a Namir point of view. Oh, no, what I'm talking about. Namir's right. Alan, I'm talking about Alan. No, you're the one, Alan, that's totally buying into it. Why are you buying into it?
Because it makes sense to me.
How does it make sense to you?
Temporal mechanics, which is I don't have a physics degree, but that's what I see is like that. The crew as they are right now have not fixed anything.
Right.
So they're still in the Confederation timeline. So
when
they meet Guinan, that Guinan has not met them in the past because they have not reset the timeline into the proper one where they would be on the Enterprise D and then go back into 18.
Well, we get that, Alan, and it makes sense. What you're saying makes sense, and we get
No,
that.
it doesn't.
But hold on.
It does make sense.
But what Namir is saying also makes sense. That what Namir is saying is that the event that has caused the problem in the timeline hasn't actually happened yet. So how?
But the players in the show right now are existing in the alternate timeline. They have memories of being in the Confederation and having to slingshot back into time. So if they had fixed the timeline, they were in normal time, they would have no memory of this.
No, but that's part of their timeline, right? Their timeline includes the Confederation divergence. So nothing changes for them. Okay, they're okay. It's for everybody else.
Hand wave it away and just call it all Q fuckery. Because we're going to run in circles about this. It's going to drive us all insane. It's going to
Don't make me draw you a diagram.
I'll draw you a diagram.
Okay, you draw me a diagram and explain this to me.
I'll prove I'm right.
I want you to do it.
One quick note too before we end here. It's like I wasn't clear on, and I had to watch this a few times because I didn't understand how Picard come to the conclusion that April 15th was the day that something was going to happen. Because Girardi picks up 3 things that have the number 15, and it's just what's the date? It's like it's April 12th. It's like April 15th. I'm like, well, why not be the 15th be May 15th or June 15th? Or
I don't know.
Or 2015. Yeah, it's like he just seemed to pull it out of his ass, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense that you come to that conclusion. I'm like, it could be like 15 days from now, 15 months from now,
15 years from now.
He just assumes because we're pretty close to April 15th. I bet you that's what it is. That didn't make any sense to me.
By then, I was a little bit like whatever in the episode, because it didn't really. There were so many different ways they could have done that. That would have felt truer or been more interesting, and it was just kind of like, the writer needs to find they need to make a link, and they're like, yeah, let's just do a thing, And it was a good, interesting, and I think this is the thing that you said, Namir, and I think in our first review, that they set up something right before the payoff, so there's no real good feeling of it's not satisfying. If they would have, if he would have made that observation at the beginning of the episode, and that would have been part of one of the plot lines of the episode of figuring out what 15 means, and then they reveal at the end, it would have been really cool, or it could have been really interesting. But it was just like 15, and as soon as she started doing that, I was like, oh, there's a mystery, and he's like, oh yeah, April 15th, done. I'm like, no, what the?
Yeah, that was kind of
Yeah, they don't have to work for anything, right? They don't actually have to expend any energy to find an answer to something. The answers are always there in front of them, like available for them to take. It's just really lazy writing, and I think that really hurts the show.
Alan, you go. Give us a rating, Alan.
This one is probably around on par with last week, I guess, in my opinion. I enjoyed it. I mean, I liked all the Guinan and Picard interactions. I liked the ending with the reveal of the Watcher. Again, the Rios and the Raffi 7 side quests aren't doing much for me, so that loses some points. So I'll probably give this one like a 7 again.
I'm gonna give this one probably a 3. Because it's worse in every way, and it doesn't have a great Borg Queen Jurati scene to save it. So I don't know what's going to happen if the next episode is worse than this one. I'm going to have to give that like a 2, and then if it keeps going, I'm just the rest of the episodes are going to be 0s.
So harsh.
It's a dilemma. I mean, because I can't. It's not the same. It's worse than the last episode, right? And the next one is probably going to be worse than this one.
Well, there's going to probably be a cliche jailbreak coming up.
Oh God. Great.
I give this episode a 4 out of 10. The reason it's as high as a 4 is the punk on the bus, and the elements I liked. Like I said, I liked the elements. They just didn't work well. And just generally, I was a little bit bored. And it's like the worst episode yet, so it gets a 4. We will be back next week to continue our Star Trek Picard reviews. We will be back to review episode 5. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Namir. I don't know how to end these things. Okay.
Just don't end it.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next week. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you want.
Are we supposed to be doing that? Is that a thing?